My name is Alex Johnson. I was in counseling for about 2 years, just shy of 3 years. I just finished counseling this year. I had been experiencing depression and anxiety for many months. It was probably a few years in totality of the time when it kind of started, and I didn't really realize what was happening, to the time period where eventually I was forced to look at the road that I was on and really come to terms with what was happening. I didn't have the capability to be able to come to terms with it. I just was lost in this sea of emotion, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And unfortunately, that came with lashing out at my loved ones, having arguments at my job with customers, which, you know, I was very lucky in that my manager took me aside to speak with me rather than just berate me or even just really come down hard on me. She took the time to say, hey, like, what's going on with you? And I was honest with her. I told her what was going on with me, the things that I had been experiencing. And she was really great. She let me know that, hey, listen, this isn't acceptable behavior, but I understand that you're going through something, so I want to help you do it. And she was really adamant about that and was great about it. And so about that time that I had that talk with her, I also had a friend who committed suicide. And that event was a defining moment for me. He was younger than I was by several years. We'd been friends for a few years, and he was actually a friend of another friend. He was connected to us through that. And we had spent much time together. We hung out, we talked, and when I found that out, it was a devastating event, devastating moment. My partner told me, she told me that morning, she just sat down and started crying. And I was like, wow, like, it was such a shock. I had no idea. And later on, that was when I got the chance to sit down and talk to his family members, to talk to his girlfriend, his loved ones. And I learned about his pain, the pain that he'd been going through. He had been experiencing depression and sadness and so many other things that I could relate to, that I had been experiencing myself. And he just couldn't deal with it. You know, whether or not he had the tools, that was his choice to make. And unfortunately, I was there to see the aftermath of it and what it looked like. That event, combined with the fact that my partner looked at me and she was blunt. She was very blunt in her acting. She just looked at me and said, I expect to come home one day and find you like this. And that, in that moment, I heard her, like, you know, just clear as day. It got through. And thank goodness it did. The road I'm walking has only one end right now, and I don't know how to stop it. And so I need to find a way to do this. I need help. And that's really what it comes down to, is I finally just said, I need help. And I sat down with her and I said it. She was like, good, what can we do? You know, but to get to that stage, I understand that not everyone gets there in the same way, that it can be really difficult, and that it does take some strength. It does take an inner voice and the inner willingness to know that maybe, just maybe, things can get better. And it takes so much strength, so much hope when you don't have any. I know it's so difficult to have hope when you feel like you have none. I think one of the things that really worked for me, that really clicked, that made me think that my counselor, her name was Jan, was going to be the right fit for me, was super early, actually, like almost within our first meeting, our first few minutes. So I'm East Indian by ethnicity and descent. And so when I went through the intake questionnaire that the Calgary Counseling Center has, they asked me questions that I wasn't expecting. I hadn't even thought about them. And one of them was like, okay, do you want a man? Would you like a man or a woman to be your counselor? And I was like, I hadn't actually thought about it. To me, I know for some people that's going to make a difference. But for me, it didn't really matter. Like, I was like, for what I'm looking for, I don't think either one is going to make a difference. But then it was a question of what's your ethnic background, and like, it doesn't matter to have someone. And then that question came up. I was like, well, I hadn't even thought of that. And you know what, maybe it would be nice. Like, that would be a thing. And so when I met Anne, and she was also East Indian in her ethnicity, it helped create this this bridge for me. I was like, oh, this other person who knows what it's like to look different than other people when you're living there, who understands a little bit more of like what maybe your past or experiences of being raised in that kind of culture could also come from. And I think that helps know that you're talking to someone who at least understands your experiences at least a little bit and can help empathize with that. And I think that builds a good rapport, especially in that early stage, when you're still trying to feel each other out. You're asking yourself like, well, who are you? And they're describing themselves to you. It's not like you just walk in there and you're the only person giving everything to them. Your counselor is going to tell you about their family. They're going to tell you about their pasts. They're going to offer up their experiences. Again, they're going to be vulnerable to you because they want you to know that you matter to them, that they want to bridge that gap with you too. In particular, I've talked before that racism in counseling for me was a really big factor. One of the big things for me was coming to terms with internalized racism and what that meant for me, and not even realizing that had been something that I've been having to dealing with for a long time. So the epiphany of just realizing that I had been internally changing my own view and viewpoint on myself, and that I now realized that was happening when I hadn't even put it together. It forced me to sit down and really consider, what does it mean? Like, who am I without this factor, or who am I after this factor? And it was really nice to just kind of come to terms with that and realize, no, like, I like who I am. Again, I like who I am. I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that fact. And I mean, just getting to I like who I am from, wow, things are terrible, is an extreme. It's like walking around the world, right? It's such a huge gap. But once you get to I like myself, I like things about myself, and I like certain aspects of it, that becomes a lot easier, and you're so much closer to it. And then it's less about being alone and more about, well, I want to be around other people. I want to be the best person I can for my loved ones. The question of, is there a right fit for me for my counseling? Like, that's really the thing that I think that doesn't really come up with the topic. And I know it gets discussed a little bit and it's more of an afterthought, but it's always something I think is really hard at the beginning that people don't think about, is what happens if it doesn't work? Like, what happens if I get there and the person just isn't the person I need it to be? In which case, keep trying. That's what I recommend. I've gotten really lucky in that the person I met was exactly who I needed them to be, like, immediately. I got very, very lucky with that, just to find the right fit for you, because there is no one size fits all solution, right? It's going to be these things that make sense to you, that mean something to you, and that tie back to you. And so I think recognizing that there can be a disconnect is important, and that it doesn't mean anyone is in the wrong or it's bad, or, oh, this is what counseling means that I can't get through. Like, not at all. You should be free and willing to try to find that connection that lets you get the help you need. I think that's really important.